All right. Well, we are live on YouTube and Facebook, and we're going to be talking about something that we don't talk about a lot. And that's the fact that if you want to make money, oftentimes you need some money. And so one of the best ways to make money is to get attention and to advertise and market. But one of the challenges is that costs money. And so depending on where you're at, whether you're just getting started or you're trying to scale from, let's say, 3 million to 4 million, wherever you are, oftentimes to go from level A to level B, wherever that is for you, is going to require some level of funding. So how do you fund that depending on where you're at and what your needs are? So I'm really excited that we've got Alex Sklar here from Payability. So Alex, thank you for jumping on.
Yeah, and thanks for having me, Kevin. And really happy to kind of dig into all topics, funding and how do you get capital? I mean, I think it's kind of this gray area. It's a little ambiguous, and people tend to see things in articles and they hear about VC funding and they hear about, this company raised this and this company did that. And what we're looking to try to do is, demystify it a little bit, but then really talk about how you can put it to work for yourself to be able to use it, especially towards advertising, because, as we'll kind of get into some examples, if you've got a market that's hot, you've got a product that's hot, and you have the capital available, sky's the limit to how much you can really get done. And happy to be on here and then share all the tips that I can.
Awesome. I appreciate it. So we've got folks here joining us from YouTube and Facebook. So let me go ahead and I'm going to actually, as a formality, I need to make sure to share us into the group too, because I think a lot of people are probably like, hey, you said we'd be in the group. So we're going to head on over that. So while I'm doing that, everybody, sometimes technology is great until it's not. So if you don't mind clicking the little thumbs up icon, give us a like to let us know that you can actually hear us, because what ends up happening is sometimes I end up talking into an empty room and realize I was only talking to myself. So I don't want to talk to myself. I want to make sure we've got folks that can enjoy the benefit of all this great knowledge and information. So if you don't mind clicking that little thumbs up icon to let us know that you can hear us, and then that way we can feel confident that we're not just talking to ourselves, because again, technology is great until it is not so great. So it looks like people can hear us. So we got Jody on Facebook. It said yes. Olga can hear us over there on YouTube. Natalie can hear us over on YouTube as well. We got, again, folks joining us. So if you're starting to join us, again, whether you're on YouTube or Facebook, wherever your preferred place is, you can definitely check this out. And you haven't missed much yet. We're just getting started. So we're going to be talking about profitability and what it all comes down to with being able to pay for getting profit in, because, we got to invest things in the front end. So while folks are jumping in here real quick, Hamza said that it is audible, so that's good. So all good. So I feel confident that folks can hear us now. So thank you everyone for making me feel better. So real quick, I'm going to have Alex describe a little bit about his background and Payability. I want to thank them for being an awesome sponsor. Check the Facebook page first and could see it live. Okay, great. So you're here. So that's awesome. Yeah. And we're in the Facebook group now as well. While everyone is, looks like Matthew said he couldn't see it live. It's because I think I forgot the instant we went to share it into the Facebook group, and now we're in the Facebook group. But real quick, everybody, if you don't mind, give me an emoji to describe cash flow and your feelings on your cash flow situation in your business. Whether it's an optimistic emoji, I wish it were better emoji, a happy emoji, however you feel right now about the cash flow situation in your business, please give me an emoji in the chat, just so we know how you're thinking on that. So while folks are doing that, Alex, go ahead and real quick, share a little bit about yourself. And if you want me to bring the slide up, I can do that as well.
Yeah, so we can get into it. So Alex Sklar, I'm the head of business development and partnerships for Payability. I've been with the company for just about 2 years. I've been in financial technology for a little over 8 years and was in public accounting before that. I'm a former founder myself. I founded both a real life, brick and mortar service business, as well as a tech startup. And, I've spent the majority of my career around mid and small size businesses, technology, finance and e-commerce. So for me, Payability was a perfect fit. And what we do over at Payability is we provide cash flow and financing solutions for e-commerce sellers, both those selling on a marketplace or those selling on their own website. And we do that through, two of our main products. One is Instant Access. It's designed for those selling in a marketplace. If you're getting paid on delayed terms, 14 days, 30 days, we want to turn that net 14 into a net 1 and get you paid daily instead of getting paid twice a month. And for those selling on their own website as well, we want to be able to project what you're going to do next month in sales, give it to you up front. That way you can invest it into advertising inventory or other things that'll help grow your business. And we'll kind of dive a little bit more into that and, when it makes sense to use capital and how you should be thinking about it. And we can take it from there.
Awesome. Awesome. I appreciate that. So we'll get into that here in just a moment. So we got folks that have, Jody is kind of like a face, Matthew, kind of a very similar face. It must be cash flow is always an issue. As Marcia mentioned here, cash flow is always an issue. We're getting there, but yikes. Yes. Marcia, I know you guys are crushing it. So we know each other but yeah, it's one of those things that everyone should keep in mind. It doesn't matter where you are. Cash flow, it's almost like the issue of cash flow only gets magnified as you get bigger. As Tony Robbins says, if you're not careful, you can grow yourself into bankruptcy. So definitely something to keep in mind. And then Michaela, I wish I knew what that was. So somehow lost in translation between YouTube and I'm guessing it's probably on the StreamYard side, which we're using for streaming this. It's shelter in. So it must be a shelter of some sort. Olga, it's a not so smiley face. So more than anything, if you're thinking cash flow is an issue in your business, I just want you to know you're not alone. And hopefully the emojis people were showing there were on that line. Because I asked a similar question yesterday when we were talking about profitability, and I got kind of a little bit of both. People either giving these kind of optimistic emojis or they were happy. But with cash flow, we know cash flow is king, and cash flow is not as simple as it sounds. So looks like Michaela was saying, sorry, it's a cat in a box peeping out. So, okay, gotcha. So yeah, so no worries on there. So, all right. So, Alex, if you don't mind, yeah, just tell us a little bit more about, what do you see are the cash flow issues that people tend to run into? Maybe we could start there. And if you need me to pull up the screen, I can do that.
Well, we'll pull up the screen in a little bit when we talk about maybe like a real life example. But
okay.
I think all companies are kind of different, and that's where we need to start. We need, like anything else, we have to build frameworks and like baselines. And so, in the Amazon world especially, you have different types of Amazon sellers. You have retail arbitrage, you have more advanced resellers who have tons of SKUs, you have private brands, private labels, you have direct manufacturers who are now selling online, you have wholesalers, and you have all sorts of different stuff in between, drop shippers. And so, when you're trying to understand cash flow, it's, having an idea of what your business looks like in comparison to other businesses is usually a good start. And, not to sound vague or high level, but it always comes back to the numbers. And so some of the numbers that you want to understand are your margins at the end of the day. Some of the old fashioned, boring finance 101 textbook numbers, they're still really relevant. And no matter how much technology we add, no matter how much demand we add, like really margins are so important. Is what you're buying able to be sold in a way that you can handle the overhead costs, the shipping costs, every other cost in between, and still return a profit that you're looking for that can either allow you to reinvest in your own business, grow your business, or if you're running a lifestyle business, or do you have margins healthy enough that you can actually live the lifestyle you want? And so there's a lot of information out there. And there's a lot of people that will tell you that, selling on Amazon is getting rich quick. All you have to do is just, press this button. And I think what everyone who's been around knows is it takes a lot of work. It's a lot of effort. And, it doesn't always have to be a grind. It depends what you're trying to build. But it is always going to be work. It's like anything else. Anyone can become a chess master if you put the work in. Anyone can become a financial day trader if you put the work in. Selling online is no different. So, depending on where you are in your journey is going to, make different options available for you. Frankly, if you're just starting out, you're going to have different options available to you than if you've been selling for 5 or 10 years. Both have cash flow issues. So now it's a question of unpackaging what are those cash flow issues. Am I looking to get my business up and running? Am I looking to enter a new product vertical? Or am I looking to be able to take advantage of opportunities? So for a lot of this conversation, we're going to talk about that latter, taking advantage of opportunities and taking advantage of opportunities through advertising and things like that. But on the highest level, anyone who's selling on Amazon typically feels a similar cash flow issue, which is I'm buying inventory on a much faster cadence than I'm getting paid from, than I'm getting my payouts from Amazon. And and I think it can impact retail arbitrage or resellers more than it can sometimes impact like larger wholesalers or even very, very large resellers who have thousands of SKUs or private labeled products. But there is still that issue of I'm constantly replenishing inventory, I'm spending money on advertising, and I'm sitting there waiting to get paid. And that's not just an Amazon issue. Amazon kind of compounds that a little bit. But anyone who's selling anything, you typically don't get paid right away unless maybe you're selling on your own website. Even then, there's like a 2 or 3 day lag between when that credit card got processed and when it actually hits your bank account. All these things can create cash flow issues at the end of the day. And so there's this whole technique out there. It's there's positive working cash flow. So everyone wants positive working cash flow. It's having healthy money in the banks. It's allowing you to take opportunities. But there's actually some tricks towards negative working cash flow. And it sounds negative. You hear the word negative working cash flow. How can that work out?
That's a scary word, negative and cash in the same sentence.
But it's actually a tool that some of the biggest companies in the world take advantage of. And the idea of negative working cash flow is if I have to pay a vendor in, let's say, 30 days, and I can sell my product and get paid for my product in less than those 30 days, take that same money, turn it again before I have to actually pay it to my vendor for the products that I sold. I'm getting more than one turn on the same dollar. And that's the idea of negative working capital is I don't have to pay out as fast as I'm getting paid. And can I turn it that same dollar multiple times before I have to actually pay for the good? Now, in the world of Amazon, we're kind of in the opposite a lot of times. I'm, buying inventory constantly, and Amazon is paying me every 2 weeks. And Amazon has their reasons for doing this, and I think that's important for everyone to understand too. For Amazon to have all this demand, for them to have all these buyers that we want to sell to, they have to really take care of the demand side. And so Amazon focuses heavily on the demand side, the A to Z guarantee. They want to make sure that there's fraudulent returns. We've heard stories about people buy a computer, 10-pound computer, they get a 10-pound box of sand. Those people are fraudulent. They should be removed from the platform. But then there's organic returns. I buy a t-shirt. I think I'm a medium. Turns out I'm a large. I want to return that t-shirt. And Amazon wants to make sure that I have enough time to buy the t-shirt, try it on, and then return it without having paid the seller and then having to claw back from the seller. And so that creates a really good buying situation. That's why Amazon has so much demand, is they focus so much on the demand side. The problem is the entire supply side is then kind of left holding the bag a little bit of, well, I'm not getting paid fast enough to take on these other opportunities, or a wholesaler here is having an auction and I can't, I could buy 3 pallets of goods for half the discount, but I can't do it. And more importantly, with all that demand, how do you stand out in front of them? And that's kind of what we're going to get into with, how to leverage capital for advertising, because there's a lot of competition out there. There's a lot between sponsored ads, sponsored videos. If you're selling on your own website as well, Google ads, Facebook ads, Google Shopping now has all these interesting ways where they're doing attribution back to your Amazon store. And so being able to leverage the power of Google's, search algorithms to drive people into your store. And it usually comes always back to like, well, how do I do it? I'm kind of tight right now. Every dollar I have, I'm kind of putting back into the business, and I'm waiting to get paid. And so, that's what we're looking to kind of jump into. Didn't mean to do too large of an overview, but it's always important when we talk about finance to really break these things down, demystify it, and understand the biggest companies in the world are taking on financing, and small companies are taking on financing too, because there's just too much opportunity out there to wait to get paid to be able to take them.
Yeah, I mean, because it's one of those things, like you said, like there's a cash flow cycle, and so if Amazon's paying you every 2 weeks, well, you have to still replenish inventory, and so maybe you have a local supplier in the U.S. and you're paying for it maybe about a week before it gets to Amazon, or maybe you have a supplier in China and you're paying it for, at least a portion of it, or maybe all of it 60 to 90 days before you receive it. Then you got to send it in, and then Amazon has to receive it. They have to process it, and then it goes up for sale. And so there's this cycle. Oh, and then while all that's happening, since this is a paid ad summit, you're paying for ads, and they're charging you for those ads, whether out of your disbursement or out of your credit card or whatever. You're paying for those ads ongoing. And so there's all these little fees that are accruing and adding up and adding up. It's like, I remember when I first got into business, I was like, well, cash flow is not that hard. So if I sell a product for this price and I have these costs, this is what I get. And then you come to realize it's not quite so clean. It's a lot of, it's happening all at these different times. And so it is important that you stay on top of the cash flow and know your numbers. And so it feels like, I remember someone using this analogy when I first started, and this was another thing I didn't quite understand until I got deeper into the rabbit hole with this, is that it feels like someone's constantly putting their hand into your pocket, trying to get things, whether it's, Amazon's creating more opportunities for paid advertising, which is great, but that's also, I think, diminishing some of the organic advertising. So it's like, we got to stay on top of everything that's happening. And a lot of these are pay to play, which are great when it comes out long term and your accountant says you made X amount of profit, but sometimes it's the getting there with, the paying for it up front and not running out of money, because at the end of the day, that's how businesses go out of business, is they ran out of money. You can't operate if you don't have money.
And I think it's critical to remember too, that in the e-commerce world, it's different than a brick and mortar. If I have a pizza shop, you may walk by my pizzeria. You may smell the pizza. You may come by and grab a menu. Maybe I'm sponsoring the local Little League team and you see my ad.
Right.
When you're online, if you're not doing some type of advertising, especially if you're on your own website, if you're not doing advertising, no one can even find you. But with Amazon, Amazon's this great demand engine. And it used to kind of be, you get on Amazon, people find you. But now, as we're seeing many more established brands come in, many more sellers piling in by the day, if you're not getting in front of people, they won't know you exist. And that typically comes from some type of advertising, some type of, PPC, some type of sponsored ad, to make sure what you never want to have happen is you have the best product out there, or you have a great product out there, and people are finding your competitor because they're out front and they're in that top list. Most people, I would ask you a quick, question, Kevin. When was the last time you ever went to page 4 of a Google? When was the last time you ever went to page 4 of a Google search?
They have pages after the first one? I thought you just had to change the words you used.
Yeah, most people don't even scroll down. And it's the same thing when you type in to Amazon, because Amazon's not really a discovery platform as much as it's, like a little bit more of a rote search. Pinterest, you're going into that rabbit hole, you're discovering things. Google, you start to type things and it kind of starts suggesting things and it learns from you. Amazon's getting a lot better, and they're starting to add more natural language processing from Alexa, because we talk to computers now. We're not just typing in like an SQL query into Amazon saying, add 2 toilet paper, select row, 1 paper towel. We're kind of saying, like, what's the best way to dry your hands? What's the best way to listen to music in the backyard? We've become very conversational now. Amazon's smart. They have Alexa. They're picking up on that conversational natural language processing, and they're going to start to build that in. But there's all sorts of tricks too. You type in a search and, you see what other people are searching for, and then you see if it's actually on Amazon, and that could be some inspiration for maybe a new product vertical you get into. But when we think about how people are searching, that's how we think about how people are finding us. And that's where we want to make sure that we are in that top portion of when they do find us. Because most people, especially on Amazon, we're used to that one-click buy. I want to see it right up top. I want to press my button. I want to have it delivered to my house the next day. And what we don't want to do is we don't want to be on page 2, page 3. We don't want to be that little line item that says, by the way, 3,000 other sellers are also selling this product. We want to be the top one. And that typically comes from an outlay of capital. Whether you have a rich uncle, or whether you're taking on outside capital, or whether you've been successful in a previous venture and you have money to invest, it's always going to take that initial outlay to build up that repeat customer base, to build up that brand, and make sure you're always coming out somewhere in that first top of scroll. And so in the slide that I put together, we kind of we're putting together high level, quick, useful information on how we can evaluate if capital is right for you.
Awesome. Well, let me pull it up here for you.
Excellent. So here we have the slide up, and I tried to condense as much as I could into one page. That way we didn't have to go through 20 pages of information, and try to keep it really high level as well as keeping it conversational. So as we were kind of talking about before, knowing your numbers, profitability. So when we're evaluating financial options, and this is we're going to get into an exact example of how instant advance can work for marketing, but on the highest level, as we're evaluating options, are you profitable? Are you showing a positive net income on your tax returns? Um, and here we're going to break down some other options. I think Payability is a great fit for Amazon sellers, but I would be remiss to say we're the only provider out there. There's lots of options, but understanding where you fit in the mix will kind of let you see what options there are out there. Because a lot of times what I've always heard, whether I was in accounting or whether I was in finance, are little anecdotes of like, shouldn't I put this all on a credit card? Well, what about an SBA loan? Should I take a home equity line of credit on my house to be able to put it towards the business? Should I do this and should I do that? And so what I'm trying to break down here a little bit is, to answer that first question about SBA financing. If you can get an SBA loan, it's excellent. It's some of your longest terms. But now we want to ask ourselves, one, would I be eligible or qualified? Typically, an SBA lender is looking that you have positive net income on your tax return. A lot of businesses don't.
Just
And
real
please.
quick, because I know we have a little bit of an international audience. So just for the sake of everyone, I'm familiar with what the SBA is. Can you just real quick explain who the SBA is?
Yeah, of course. So the SBA is a small business administration, and they provide loan products through all sorts of different regional banks. And so there's different SBA programs. They're typically, I believe, they're only available to U.S. businesses. And there's SBA 7A loans, which is designed for working capital. There's SBA loans that are designed to build buildings. When the government, and essentially how it works is you have some type of local bank, and that bank is partnered with the SBA. And what the SBA is telling that bank is, we want you to make business loans, and we're going to cover 80% of that loan. And so you only have to cover 20%, which allows that bank to feel confident and free up capital to provide to small businesses, knowing that this government entity is backing them. And so it's a way for the government to be able to inject money into businesses to have them scale and have them grow. But because the government's involved, it's also going to be some of the strictest requirements in being able to get financing. And so some of those requirements that they're looking at are, do you have collateral? And so for those who may not know what collateral is, the greatest example of collateral is a mortgage in your home. When a lender gives you money to get a mortgage to buy a house, that house is the collateral. If you don't pay the mortgage for a long enough a period of time, they're going to take the house. So, same with a car. You finance a car, you don't make your car payments, that car is the collateral. That's why they're willing to give you that much capital to be able to buy the car. And so collateral is any type of tangible or intangible good that can be used to offset a default. So the SBA, when you're talking about collateral, it's typically the less risky. And so now you can have the lowest rates and the longest terms. I have this capital I can hold on to. There used to be a lot of financing companies that used to use inventory as collateral. With Amazon particularly, it's a little hard. That inventory is in FBA. Amazon has the UCC on that inventory oftentimes. So for collateral to be useful to a lender, it has to be collectible. So if I have inventory in an area where no one can ever pull it out, it's dispersed all over the country. It's not really collateral anymore because I can't receive it. And in the case of a house, you can't just pick up a house and move it. But we have a healthy housing market, and so they feel pretty reasonably assured that they could resell the house at some time. And that's kind of how collateral works. So when we're talking about the SBA, government backed, like they want to take the lowest risk possible. They're either looking for very healthy businesses that have seasoned track records, you have positive tax returns at the end of the year, you have a healthy profit and loss, you have a healthy balance sheet, or you have collateral that they think is actually some liquid enough, essentially. And so for those that are eligible for SBA, it's a great program. But then you also want to look at the timing of financing like that. So if I'm looking to spend money on advertising, and I can get my advertising mix up in a matter of a week or two, and I can get those ads live in a matter of days, and I can see returns on those ads over hours, days, and weeks. Do I really want to pay off a loan for 3 or 4 years for something that I can get done in a month? And so that's where, timing is also part of it, and where we kind of go into timing. How quickly do you need the funds? Can you wait to secure bank approval? Do you want to be able to have access to funds like routinely where you can take funds, put them to work, pay them back, have access to more funds? And so that leads into more of like this idea of a line of credit. Now, with a line of credit, you would have access to a lot of funds and you'd be able to take the funds you need, pay them back over time. The issues with lines of credit typically are the majority of lines of credit are provided by traditional banking institutions. And unfortunately, COVID's starting to change this, hopefully, but unfortunately, banks still look at e-commerce as a fad. And so they're going, you sell on Amazon, and we've seen this happen with companies that are doing, 50, 60 million a year on Amazon. They still look at them with like a little bit of a side eye. Amazon's in a little bit too much control here. How do you control your business? What if Amazon kicks you off? What happens if no one wants to buy your product anymore? Frankly, they're silly questions that banks are still a little outdated by asking, but we have to kind of answer these questions if we want that type of capital. And so, where fintechs have come in is they've taken these parts of those financial, institutional lenders, and they've said, well, I don't need to have all the deposits. I don't need to give out mortgages. I'm not looking to provide you a pension or benefit. I just want to offer this one thing, like your line of credit, or I just want to offer this one thing, like your loan. And so that's typically where fintechs have unpackaged those larger banks to give, like, essentially work with the niches and the industry verticals that they work with. Our instant advance, which we'll get into in a minute, kind of does that. It looks and feels like a line of credit, but it's not a line of credit because we're not a bank. And so, basically trying to solve the pain points that people have, but providing them a solution that's also faster and works. Because at the end of the day, when we look at all these different types of options, it's cash. At the end of the day, we're talking about cash. And so cash is a commodity. And so typically the only things you can change about a commodity are the deliverability, so the speed with which someone gives it to you, the user experience. How am I giving it to you? Am I giving it to you often enough? Am I making it really easy? And then rates and terms. And depending on which one it's kind of like a pie chart. So depending on which side you move from, you got to kind of make it up on the other side. So if I'm really, really fast, I'm not looking at anything. The rates will probably be a little bit higher because I'm not able to spend that time underwriting. If I spend 3 months looking at your business, I should have pretty just about the lowest rates ever because what else is there to look at after 3 months? You've given that, the underwriting enough time to feel comfortable. And they all kind of play into each other. And that's why there's a lot of different financing options. And that's why you want to make sure you're doing your homework. You want to work with, institutions that know how to actually work with your business and don't try to paint you into what they want, but know the ups and downs of Amazon, know the ups and downs of e-commerce. Maybe you're omni-channel, maybe you're selling online, you're also selling brick and mortar. Maybe there's more than one partner you want to work with for that. And so timing is often a big part of the mix. Cost is also one of the considerations we have to think about. How much can you afford to pay in interest or in fees? So as you evaluate options, and you want to see where the lowest cost, and you want to negotiate discounts. You want to, it's a partner that you're working with. You want to have it be a long-term partner. But kind of back to what we were saying before on that pie chart. If you're looking for capital yesterday, the fee's probably going to be a little bit higher because they're going to have less time to look at the risk. And that's what it all comes back down to for all the lenders, whether we're talking about the Sba and Collateral, whether we're talking about large financial institutions, whether we're talking about fintech companies. It's risk. It's the idea of if I have more time, the risk will be lower. If you need capital fast, the risk might be higher, and the fees are going to kind of be associated with such. And the last thing you want to look at as you're exploring your opportunities is the reputation. Can I trust this lender, this funder, this advisor I'm speaking with? You always want to do your due diligence. You want to look at Trustpilot reviews. You want to look at different reviews online. You want to ask your friends. But typically, any partner you work with should be happy to answer these types of questions. If they don't, you want to ask yourself, why aren't they willing to answer these questions? Is it that they don't know? That's okay. Not everyone knows everything. Or is it that they're trying to be cagey on purpose? If they're trying to be cagey on purpose, then you got to ask yourself, is this the right person you want to partner with? Because working with a financial partner is different than just working with a vendor. Though for Amazon sellers, it's probably not too far off working with your suppliers. Do you want to go with just some random vendor you've never heard about? Are you sure that they can fulfill all the orders that you're placing? Or do you want to go with someone that's more reputable? Financial partners are the same. When you're taking on capital, you want to make sure that you're taking on capital with a partner that understands your business and isn't going to be scratching their head when you ask them a question about, well, gee, that's the first time I've ever seen anything like that. You want to go with, proven, tried companies. And so to move this all into advertising, and I know I'm getting a little long-winded here, there's just so much to unpackage when I talk about finance. I could probably talk about it for hours.
Well, this is a great overview. I'll just say that.
And so as we start to talk about, how do we use, let's get back to what we're here for. How do I actually leverage capital to take on, to be able to do more advertising? And the way I would kind of reframe that is, how do I take capital to take on opportunity? And that's how we want to think about it, because advertising, we're doing that for a reason. We're getting those ads out because we want that demand. We want people to be buying our products, want people to be coming to our storefront, and we want people to eventually find their way to that button that says buy. And so that's all opportunity. Opportunity comes in many different shapes. But for this specific conversation, we want to talk, and I'm looking at my example now, and I realize I wrote ROAS. I should have written ACOS. ROAS and ACOS are very similar. It's just an inverse of the formula, essentially. But so here I put together a little example. Let's assume for every dollar, and it depends on different product verticals. Sometimes your return on advertising spend, that's what ROAS means. It's for every dollar I put out in advertising, how many dollars am I going to get back?
Right.
And so, different product verticals are different. Some products have a ROAS of 3. We have some customers who have ROAS as high as 12. I've heard of some that have a ROAS as high as 20. And that means for every dollar they spend on advertising, they're going to make $20 back in revenue, top line revenue before costs. So we're going to use an example here of if someone has a ROAS of 7x. For every dollar they put out there in advertising, they're getting $7 in sales. So using this example, let's say we were to provide that seller with $25,000. Let's say we had a flat rate of 30%, which is high. And we're going to use a high number for this example for just this reason. And so here, if we're looking at $25,000, and we're doing the math, $25,000 times 0.3 is $7,500. That's expensive, right? 30% is high, and we're using a high interest. Normally, when we'd be looking at our instant advance product, normally we'd be looking at rates, anywhere between 2 and 15%. Purposely using a very high number for a reason, to show how much opportunity can actually be derived. So if you have a 7x ROAS and you take outside capital of $25,000, that is a rate of 30%, you're gonna have a cost of capital there of $7,500. So if I can put that $25,000 to work and I have a 7x ROAS, I can turn $175,000 of top line revenue. Now, if I take that top line revenue of $175,000, I subtract the $25,000 I have to give back to the funding company. I had a cost of capital of $7,500. I'm left with $142,500. That's your opportunity. And so now the question you have to ask yourself is, does it make sense for me to spend $7,500 to create $142,500 in new opportunity? A lot of times when people do the math, they'll add the 25 plus the 7,500. That 25 is just returning back the capital that that funding company provided you. Your real cost of it in this example would be 7,500. Now, if we had a lower interest rate, let's say it was at 10%, you'd be looking at 2,500. So then the question would be, does it make sense for me to, spend $2,500 to take on to create 147,500 of new opportunity? And so that's the kind of quick math. It's not perfect. Obviously, from that 142,500, now we have the cost of goods sold. we have our Amazon fee, we have other fees involved, but that's kind of how you break down when you're looking at, does it make sense for me to take on this opportunity? So even here with a much higher rate than we would offer, and a high rate purposely for the example, now you ask yourself, $7,500 for 142,000 of opportunity. And the big thing here is, it looks great on paper, it looks exciting. This is where the gut check happens, and it goes back to rule number one, knowing your numbers. Does that actually make sense for your business? Are those margins good? Out of that 142,500 new opportunity, is that going to make sense for you, or is all of that going to be eaten up by fees and inventory? And that's where then you might have a margin issue, and that's a different, it's probably a different conversation we could have, but like that's really how you break down capital is what's the actual cost of the capital? What's the opportunity I can create from it? Doesn't make sense for my margins.
Great, great. So basically what you're showing here is kind of a worst case scenario. Like 30% would be really high, but you're saying even if at 30% cost of capital of getting that funding, if you were able to turn the money you got there around based on ROAS, so it's kind of like a lot of times we think of return on investment in terms of inventory, but there's also return on investment in terms of attention. And so whether it's Amazon ads, Facebook ads, now this is a very Amazon focused summit, so tread lightly when you get into some of the other locations. But if there's something you're looking to try and you think you've got the way to do it, or if you already have money coming in from a source like Amazon advertising and you want to now try something else, theoretically, and correct me if I'm wrong here, it's almost like you could take the money you would have just spent on the Amazon advertising and pull it out of your business, but you're still funding the Amazon advertising using a product like this, because money is somewhat fungible. Am I making sense with what I'm trying to say here?
You are, and money is fungible, and it's I think a lot of people sometimes think, well, this only makes sense for a smaller seller. Like I have a big profitable business here. And I have to say, we work with sellers as small as 2,000 a month in sales. We work with sellers as large as 12 million a month in sales. And they're all looking to either get paid faster or they're looking to have additional capital that they can put to work. There are companies out there, huge established brands. I mean, Saks Fifth Ave literally is raising a couple $100 million right now to go deeper into e-commerce. And so it's really a question of, again, the opportunity. And people, a lot of times people say, they want to be the next Casper, they want to be the next Allbirds, and they want to raise that big round of money. And I was actually just on a panel recently talking about, is VC funding the right move? And again, it's capital. If you take on $50 million, can you grow a $500 million business out of it? If you take on $5,000, are you going to get $20,000 of pop or $10,000 of pop? And I think a lot of times where people can sometimes make mistakes when looking at capital is, sometimes capital is a Band-Aid, right? And sometimes you're like, something broke, I need to replace it tomorrow, or I'm going to lose out on my normal course of business, let alone any new opportunity. If you have the capital on hand, you're going to use it. If you don't have the capital on hand, it might be a credit card. It might be, an advance from us. It might be like there's all sorts of times where every now and then there's a problem and you need to solve it with cash. When we're talking about advertising, we're talking about taking on that opportunity. And I don't mean to kind of beat it to death, but that's really what it comes on to. And so you want to ask yourself, can you get that opportunity? If you have a 1x ROAS, for every dollar you put out there, you're going to get $1 back. Throwing $100 million out of it is not going to actually do anything for you, because anytime you take on any type of outside capital, there's always going to be a rate associated. So it can never be one-to-one. You always have to do at least a little bit more than one, because the money has a cost to it. And I think that's a big, it's more of like, it's kind of a learning curve that people sometimes learn before they've kind of thought about it. And so I want to make sure everyone understands that too. Mm-hmm. Whether you're the largest publicly traded company or whether you're a business just starting out, whether it's an investor, whether it's credit card, or whether it's working with like a company like Payability, anytime you take an outside dollar, They're going to want a little bit more than that $1. So you need to make sure that you're able to get a little bit more of opportunity for that dollar, or else that's when it wouldn't make sense. And when we look at things like we see a lot of people, repeat customers show up every year around August because they want to stock up an inventory, and then we see them spend a lot of money on sponsored ads, big established Amazon sellers, because now it's Q4. It's one of the busiest times of their year, and they don't want to lose market penetration with other people jumping in with ads too. So sometimes they have to spend a little bit more than they normally would on advertising just to even maintain. So different situations for different folks, but what we've done here at Payability too to try to make it actually work for e-commerce, and that's what I was saying before. You want to work with partners who know how e-commerce, especially how Amazon works, because in the world of e-commerce, then there's Amazon, and Amazon is very specific. And so what we've done is we've done things like we do a rebate, and so for every week you pay back early. So you could have, let's say, 0.5% per week. We would project that it's going to be 20 weeks to pay it back, but if so it would be maybe like 10%. But then if you pay it back in half the time, we'll actually knock that rate down by giving you a rebate. Now you only paid 5%, because what we're always trying to do, and this is what a lot of funders are trying to do now, you want to incentivize using the money in a good way. If you have a way to turn capital into revenue, we want to make it as available as we can, as fast as we can, and we want you want to keep doing it, frankly, until you've hit a market saturation. You may not always have that 7x ROAS. If you start crushing it, other people may see that you're doing, they may kind of copycat what you're doing a little bit, and that ROAS may, it may creep down a little bit, your ACoS may creep down. And so you want to take advantage when you do have those high multiples. You want to take as much advantage of it as you can while you have it, because it doesn't always last forever.
Yeah, that's so true. And going back to our whole thing about like cash, and you just brought up Q4, and that just had me thinking like Mike Jackness, if some people may know, he's got a great podcast called Ecom Crew. He was just talking like maybe a month or so ago about like now's the time to be thinking about Q4. So like somebody like me, like my sales go up about 5-6x during Q4 because I have very giftable type products. So it's like I'm starting to put all my chips out on the table in August for sales I will get in November and December that I will get paid on in December and January. And so it's like you start thinking about these little things. And so like every year I start getting stressed out about like, okay, what are some of the opportunities that now I'm not available to because my chips are all out on the table. So
Right.
The way you're describing this is a way to still have some more chips to play with.
That's exactly right. And I think too, depending on how long it takes you to receive your inventory, if you are, a
It's
private label
longer every
brand,
year.
yeah, and if if it takes a month to get the ordering in overseas, and it takes 3 to 4 months to get that inventory in, we're almost in June. That means you need to start
Yeah.
ordering stuff now to even have it available, because Q4 is great. And Amazon does very well in Q4. A lot of people buy stuff for, the holidays in September and October and November as well. And so if you want to have those products available for, um, the Black Friday weekend, essentially, depending on how long it takes you to actually source your inventory, you're maybe making those purchases now and in July, but that doesn't mean you can stop every other thing you're doing in your business. So you may need additional capital to be able to earmark for something that you're going to sell 6 months from now, while still being able to have capital for running the business today. And leveraging outside financing has been effective for exactly those reasons. And it's typically why we focus on advertising and inventory, because it's what can have the most impact on your business. If you're using outside capital, one thing I would stress is you want to use it for revenue generating activities.
Right.
You,
Not to
you
go
know,
buy a
like,
Lamborghini.
yeah, it's definitely not to buy a Lamborghini. And and I think when we think about drop shippers too, it's like kind of an interesting dynamic. And so there's a lot of drop shipper can do, spending money on advertising to drive demand. The key thing you need to remember is, can your suppliers that you're drop shipping from keep up with that demand? Because once you're leveraging capital and you're driving up that demand, if you only have a 50% order fulfillment rate, you still spent the money to bring them in. And now it's a question of how many of the orders are going to get returned. And typically when we see drop shippers, a lot of times those returns are happening because the vendor on the back end can't handle the demand that you're driving. And so it's just like there's all sorts of little nuances, and that's again why we kind of started with, it depends where you are in your seller journey and what you're looking to accomplish and how you're doing it.
Yes. Awesome. 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 All right. So here's what we're going to do. So, I'm going to go ahead and open it up to questions to see if folks have questions. So I know there's a little bit of a delay with the streaming and whatnot, so it may take a moment for questions to come in. So just to kind of keep things moving, I just want to give everybody the opportunity, the comment section, whether, if you're live on YouTube, it's probably, to the right of the screen, depending whether you're on your phone or desktop. And then if you are at, in Facebook, just add it to the question to the chat and Facebook, and I'm going to go ahead and make sure that I see in the group, because sometimes the group stuff doesn't make it into here. So, all right, so let's do this. While folks are thinking of their questions and whatnot, I just wanted to ask this question. One of the things you talked about was that there's different, companies like let's say banks or fintechs, financial technology companies like a loan builder from PayPal or Cabbage or, whatever. So there's all these different ones where oftentimes they're giving you a loan. And so a loan is debt and the capital advance. Is this a loan?
So it's a great question. And so to answer it directly, and then I'll give you a little explanation. No, an advance is not a loan. And so the big difference is a loan is a financial provider is giving you money and you're giving them a promise. You're making a promise to pay it back. Whether the company stays in business or not, you are individually making a promise to pay that back. So now the risk is on you. And so that's where sometimes they can have lower rates because you've now taken on all the risk of no matter what happens, I'm going to pay this back. An advance is essentially a purchase of future sales you haven't made yet. So all the risk is on the funding company. What happens if I buy, let's say you're doing $50,000 a month in sales, and I provide you $50,000 up front. I say, I'm going to give you next month's sales up front. You're going to pay me back over 6 months. Well, what happens if you decide tomorrow, you know what? I don't want to be in business anymore. I've had enough. I'm shutting down my Amazon store. Those future sales are never going to happen. So I bought something that doesn't exist yet. And so now all the risk is on me. And so that's where you kind of see the rates and the terms kind of, play into it a little bit is with an advance, you're pushing the risk from yourself onto the funding company that you'll still stay in business and hopefully you'll grow your business. But that's really the big difference between a loan and an advance. And, there's some other nuances as well. A loan shows up in your balance sheet. It is a liability. An advance is not a liability. It's actually, and I'll go back into my accounting days here, an advance is actually a contra asset. It's actually what's called a contra asset. So you have accounts receivable, and those are, the sales that you've made that you're waiting to get paid on. When you're advancing those sales, whether it's our daily access product or an instant advance product, you're basically taking an account receivable, an asset on your balance sheet, and you're lowering it because you've already pledged it to someone else. It's still receivable. It's just, you've just said, I'm not going to receive it. I'm going to let, my lender receive it or my funder receive it. Whereas, debt it's on your liability part of your asset sheet. So for those that aren't, super versed in accounting, essentially a balance sheet is assets equal liabilities plus owner equity. If you're going to take VC funding, you're going to lower that owner equity. If you're going to take debt, you're going to add to the liability. If you're going to take an advance, you're basically just going to lower from the asset. So for all those companies that are out there crushing it, they're looking at maybe getting a larger bank product, and sometimes it takes a year. They want to see your track record. Maybe you're looking at a VC investment. A lot of times they don't want to see a lot of debt on your balance sheet. So this is also, an advance is also an interesting play in that factor and that's some of our biggest customers we work with. They are looking for VC investment. They don't want to show debt on the balance sheet, and they don't want to show large liabilities. So they would rather do it as an advance. And you brought up a Loan Builder by PayPal. It's actually why they have two products. They have PayPal Working Capital, which is an advance, And then they have Loan Builder by PayPal, which is a loan. Giving people both options. The only issue with PayPal is you have to be running your processing through PayPal, and they can only look at what's happening on PayPal, as opposed to like a third party like us. We can look at all your different marketplaces and that you're selling on.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, we got a question here, and this is more, I guess, a high level question. Is what are your recommendations for bookkeeping, and which reports do you recommend using? Any recommended training and or providers in this area? So I guess since we're on the topic of finances, and we do have an accounting guy here, that's a phenomenal question.
So I don't know that, and I know that there are a couple companies that have tried to do this. I don't know that anyone has ever invented the accounting software that understands Amazon soup to nuts. Full stop. There are so many nuances. If I want, I mean, like you have your Amazon commission, maybe you're selling an FBA, maybe you have Prime, gift wrapping, short-term storage, long-term storage. There's rollover balances, unavailable balances. I don't know that there's any one software, and there's a couple software companies out there that are trying to solve this. One of them I can think of off the top of my head that's one of our partners is called Connect Books. It is a team of accountants that are created accounting software specifically for Amazon. But I'm a little bit old-fashioned. I still like QuickBooks. I think QuickBooks is probably one of the easiest out-of-the-box tools to use. It's available. They have I still use QuickBooks, their cloud package. That way I don't have to have it downloaded on my desktop. I have it available on my cell phone. I have it available on my laptop. I have it available anywhere I go. And as far as training, that's probably where I would say QuickBooks is interesting too. I don't know that they can train you on Amazon accounting specifically, but there's a whole network of QuickBooks like bookkeepers and helpers that can help. I'd also say check out places like Upwork. There might be a lot of people who worked for previous e-commerce companies, and you might be able to find Amazon specific accountants on Upwork. And then as far as like some additional training, if you want to learn on your own, there's a great accounting book called Accounting Demystified. I remember I had bought that for someone else. They kept asking me accounting questions knowing I was an accountant, and I bought them a book to say, I think these could answer actually a lot of your questions. But Accounting Demystified, I make no commissions. I've just from them. It's a book that I've bought for people that I know is really helpful, as well as honestly, I would start with a Google search too. If you have a question, I'm sure other people have had a question. Places like Quora are really excellent. A lot of really in-depth stuff there. But as far as software, I mean, a lot of people can do it on their. You can start with an Excel sheet and just start breaking out the numbers, and then at some point you'll probably want to graduate to like an accounting software. Xero is another one that I know a lot of people are using. So QuickBooks, Xero, FreshBooks. Those are usually the ones that we typically see the most outside of very large companies that are building their own internal accounting software with things like Oracle and SAP.
Yeah, and I use Xero for both my e-commerce business as well as for maximizing e-commerce. They're both two separate companies. I will say this, it's much easier for me to do it on the maximizing e-commerce, basically, consulting type of side than it is on the e-commerce side. There's just a lot more moving pieces, especially as you grow. I would say it's one of those things, depending on where you're at, I would hire a bookkeeper. And if anyone needs a recommendation for a bookkeeper, I have a bookkeeper I use for my e-commerce side of the things. And I've sent a lot of people to them, and they're still using them, and everybody seems happy with them. So send me an email and I'll make a recommendation or an introduction for you if that's something you're interested in. The rates are very reasonable. But it's one of those things that I would say, as a business owner, you got to focus on the business, and the business is being not, where it's working on your business, not working in your business. And bookkeeping very quickly becomes very tedious, especially selling on Amazon and trying to figure out all these moving details. So I would say that's something. Definitely check out the book, because you got to understand the accounting things, but I would go from there. So next question we have here is from Marcia. Does Payability walk you through all the figuring out that's shown in the example?
So we have account executives that are in the offices every Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. And so I don't know that each and every person would walk you through each and every example like the one I just gave, but we're always happy to answer any questions. What we would first do is you would put an application in. You might talk with one of the business development reps on my team. We typically talk with people who haven't finished their application to kind of see if they have any questions or answers. If you get a full application in, which is also connecting your API to the Amazon store, that way you don't have to take screenshots. You don't have to send us a lot of documentation. We have an approved API. We go through the audit with everyone else with Amazon, and that way we can be able to underwrite you in 24 hours. Then an account executive would get on the phone with you, want to learn a little bit more about your business, learn about what you're trying to achieve and accomplish, and then depending on which product seems like a fit for you, they're more than happy to go through as much detail as you want. When it comes to like your individual opportunity that you're looking for, I mean, it's tough for us to give advice on what you should do with your business. Our advice is will be probably centered more around if you're looking for this much capital, here's how we can provide it. Here are what the rates and terms are. What are you looking to do with it? Maybe give you some previous examples. But we're always happy to talk with people. We have real people. We have real people on the phone every day. And if it's something that someone else can't answer, and you wanted to reach out to me individually to kind of break down a little math for you, I'd be available as well.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. And I will share a link that Payability had given me. So in full disclosure, if you're just watching this at the very end and maybe you haven't been familiar with the PPC Mastery Summit, Jacob is with Payability, and Payability is one of the sponsors of the summit. I like to be very transparent about things, but I've had a relationship with Payability, sponsoring quite a few events, and talked to a lot of people who are very happy with their products and what it's done for them. So if that sounds like something that's interested to you, definitely check them out and at least talk to an account executive. You don't have to take them up on it. Like, sometimes just looking into something is worth it. So if you go to maximizingecommerce.com/payability, and just to help me also understand too, real quick, Jacob, we were talking about there's different, like, for example, PayPal and Loan Builder are kind of the same thing, but not really. And there's different advances. What is different about Payability with some of these other advanced companies and how it relates to e-commerce?
Yeah, so there's all sorts of different companies out there, and where we are different is we got our start with Amazon sellers, and right now we are pretty much the largest third-party e-commerce funding company. We're almost about to hit the 4 billion mark. We've deployed over $3.5 billion in the last 5 years. We deployed about $1.4 billion during COVID alone, and
Mm-hmm.
you need to understand Amazon. There's a lot of different companies out there that want to work with you, but they don't understand how Amazon works. They don't understand the payments of Amazon. But then we don't want to just, only be able to work with Amazon. Unlike some other companies, we actually take more of a 360 holistic approach. We want to be able to work with a lot of the channels you're working with. And so, like, some of the difference between Shopify Capital and Amazon Lending can work with you just on Amazon, and it's invite only. Hopefully you get an invitation. But there's no way to reach out to Amazon Lending and say, I'd like a loan. Shopify Capital is also invite only. There's no way to reach out to them directly. There's also no one to talk to if your rates and terms don't make sense for you. It's kind of a take it or leave it. And again, they can only look at Shopify sales. Stripe Capital can only look at your Stripe sales. PayPal Working Capital and PayPal Loan Builder, only your PayPal sales. Square can only look at your Square sales. So there's kind of a running theme here, and I'm not trying to beat it to death, but we want to be able to look at everywhere you're selling online. We don't work for some of our largest customers. We do some offline stuff for them, but typically we focus exclusively online. That way we become experts in all the marketplaces. So not just Amazon, but Amazon, Walmart, Newegg, Shopify, even some smaller sites, Top Hatter, eBay. We're launching an Etsy program pretty soon as well, and we're constantly, based on the demand we hear from folks, we're constantly launching into new marketplaces. And that way you can have ideally one provider who can provide you financing and look at all your sales to get a better picture of you than just what you're doing on one platform.
Yes, definitely. And, kind of on that different platforms, different needs. Marcia had asked the question about, walking through the example, and then she kind of clarified a little bit after that of, especially related to running ads. I've used advances against accounts payable. This sounds similar. Just to give a little more context, she sells to sells to brick and mortar, but Amazon is kind of new to them, and it's gotten to be a more expensive venture than, say, the brick and mortar side of things, of selling to brick and mortar stores. So they're kind of going now direct to the consumer, whereas before they were doing B2B. Marcia, correct me if I'm wrong, knowing what I know about your business. So yeah. So how would this be for someone that is familiar with like a accounts payable loan? Because again, that's usually a loan though, right? The advance to accounts payable, or I'm not as familiar with that word.
Well, it's the other side. It's accounts receivable, and so
gotcha.
What a loan again is I'm going to look at the whole package, and I'm basically going to say, here's some money. You're going to pay me back in X amount of time. You're making a promise to pay it back. And the way it's really different is we're basically looking at your past experience and then projecting what your future experience, what your future sales are going to be, and giving them to you up front. And then our other product, Instant Access, you've already made the sale. You're waiting for Amazon to pay you. We want to get you paid faster. So we want to get you paid every day. That way you have access to capital to be able to reinvest in the business. Rather than getting paid every 2 months. And I think a lot of people have experienced, that 14-day payment window can sometimes creep up to 21 days or 28 days, or someone puts the wrong label on a product, shipping it into FBA, and you get suspended for a day, but that suspension happens right before your payout, and they roll the payout over to the next period. And working with us, you would get paid up into that point. And that way you wouldn't be all of a sudden waking up to having a month of not having been paid. So some of our larger customers as well, they call it an insurance. I wouldn't call it insurance. I would call it assurance. Insurance is a specific product, but assurance is feeling assured. Yeah. It's like in the world of lending and everything, you got to be very careful on your terminology, but it is kind of an assurance, because with some of our bigger sellers, they're doing so much every day, they can't afford to even be, 5 days of not bringing in the income. Again, back to rule number one, it's kind of like, what are your margins? What is your business? What are you trying to accomplish? Like, I don't think to that point, hobbyists, a lot of times on eBay, you have a lot of hobbyists. They're pickers. They go to estate sales, they go to garage sales, and they're really, the hunt for the product is more for them than the actual growing a business. And so if you're doing something as a hobby, you don't necessarily want to leverage outside capital. You want to leverage outside capital if you're looking to grow that business. And you may not leverage outside capital forever. You may take it in pieces. And at times you may want it every, August, ramping up for Q4. You may want it because you have a new product vertical out there and you want to be able to turn money as fast as you can and use it for a period of time. And that's where it always comes back to, like, what are you looking to accomplish? What's the opportunity out there? If capital is holding you back from those opportunities, you want to get your hands on capital to be able to take them.
Awesome. Now, you'd explained that there's a couple different products or packages, I guess would be or you probably know the right terminology, but there are a couple different options, maybe is the right word I'm looking for, that folks have with Payability. Can you kind of go through the difference between the two?
Sure. So we have our flagship product is called Instant Access, and that is it's that daily pay accelerated payment product. So essentially what we're going to do is we're going to, it's about a 5-10 minute application, connect your API, and then we would follow up with you to learn a little bit more about your business and get that underwritten in about 24 hours. Both our products have the same application process. And so you would just in the application select what you're interested in. And so there we're basically going to advance you up to 80% of today's sales made available tomorrow. We're going to do that every day until Amazon releases the full payment. That's when we give you back that 20% we were holding back. And the reason we hold back that 20% is for things like chargebacks and returns. So we don't get in a position where we're over advancing you and then you owe us money back, but we're still advancing you. And it just creates even more of an accounting nightmare than sometimes e-commerce can already be. But essentially, it's getting up to 80% of today's sales available tomorrow instead of having to wait 2 weeks for them. And we do that every day, providing daily capital. Instant Advance is our other product. That's that lump sum of capital. So that's where we're going to project what you're going to do next month, and we can provide 75 to 150% of that lump sum up front, and then we get paid back by taking a small percentage of your sales over the next 3 to 6 months, depending on how fast you pay it back. For every week you pay it back earlier, we'll actually rebate you the fee. And then we have our Payability Seller Card. It's a corporate Visa debit card. It's available everywhere that accepts Visa. It's available to anyone, any legal U.S. resident over 18. So once we give people money, we have to actually make it available to them. So everyone who becomes a customer gets a dashboard that they can log into, which is tied to an e-wallet. And so in the dashboard, you can log in every day. You can see your available balance. And from there, you can either wire the money to your bank account. You can either do an ACH up to $100,000 a day for no fee. You can do an instant transfer, which moves the money in about 5 minutes. There is a small fee for that. It's basically just a pass-through of the fee that we have to pay our provider to do it. Or you can opt into our Payability Seller Card. I have a card in my hand. That's why I keep doing that. So
we kind of get the sense of what you mean.
So our Payability Seller Card, it's tied to that same dashboard in e-wallet. So every dollar that's available to you can also be available on the wallet. But if you use the card, we'll give you 2% cash back on every dollar you spend as another way to constantly lower the fees and make it as friction-free as possible. From there, we have a couple other products that we have in the works right now. We're taking our instant advance and making it look and feel even more like a line of credit. So right now, you only pay for the money for the time it's outstanding. For every week you pay it back early, we're going to rebate you. We also allow you to renew and have access to more capital once you've paid it down about 50%. But we're doing some we're doing some different things to kind of make that even look and feel more like a line of credit, where you'll get max approved. You can take as little or as much as you want, and then kind of pay them off in tranches. We have a vendor pay product that we've been working on, where you can pay your vendors directly through our platform, so you don't have to pull the money out and then send it to a vendor. You can send it directly to a vendor through the platform. And we've got a couple other products in the works that I'm not privy to disclose just yet, but we'll keep everyone informed once they get launched.
Awesome. And just so we understand, the process is basically, if somebody wanted to find out more, they would just go to the link that we've provided there on the screen, maximizingecommerce.com/payability. And from there, they would fill out a form. Somebody would contact them, figure out best option, right? And this is all based on past sales history, not based on credit history. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's exactly right. So our application takes about 5 to 10 minutes to complete. We perform no credit checks whatsoever. Not a soft pull, not a hard pull, nothing. It's all based on the health of your business. We do a background check as part of final underwriting. And that's really what we're looking for there. It's kind of like identity theft and financial fraud. But it's not based on credit at all. It's based on the health and performance of your business. And so what I usually encourage people to do is get an application in, see what we can do for you. If it's a fit, we want to be able to, we would love to work with you. If it's not a fit, there's no harm, no foul. There's literally no obligation. There's no commitment. And no credit check. So, the application takes about 5 to 10 minutes. You would talk with an account executive, and if it's a fit, great. If it's a fit, if it's not a fit, all we would ask is give us a little feedback on why it's not a fit so we can try to improve.
Awesome. Well, I got one last question here, which is, do you do international transfers? So if they want to pay Chinese suppliers, or is it basically they get the funds and then they can just use the funds however they need to use it?
So we we work with, we have a couple FX partners that we work with. We work with Ping Pong and we work with OFX. So if you do want, we do work with international sellers as well, but we only work with .com. So, you're in Germany, but you're selling on Amazon.com. That's not a problem. You're in the US, but you're selling on Amazon.uk. We don't have that functionality just yet. It's something that we have on our roadmap, but we do have 2 great FX partners that can, you can set up an account with them as well. And we can, basically you can come through us, say you're also looking at Forex, we can get you over there, and you can always receive the currency in your home currency that you want. It's a really important thing. Amazon sellers are international. We want to make sure that part of our ethos is being the financial toolkit for e-commerce sellers and friction-free financing. And not having an FX solution would kind of go against that. So we do have them.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, appreciate you coming on here. This is a real interesting conversation to think about, the things that come up in business with cash flow and some of the solutions that are out there. So for those of you who have now made it all the way here to the end, we've been on now for a little over an hour. So thank you for your time, Alex, as well as for those of you who have made it all the way here to the end. It's probably worth at least checking out. So again, no obligation. And again, full transparency. Payability is one of the sponsors of this event, but Payability has been around a long time. Payability sponsored other events I've been involved with as well, because they do have a great reputation out there in the market. So thank you so much. And we'll wish everyone the best.
Thank you for having me, Kevin, and knock it out of the park, everyone. And if you want to come check us out, might be worth a conversation. So we would welcome it.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thanks so much.